All right, so this is very different from the other talks. So this is a very detailed one. Those were great talks, by the way, on design. Very interesting. I would say this talk is not on design. So if Edison said that invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, this is the perspiration part, where building a game is like a series of like 30 or 50 of things like this to try to figure out how to do it if you don't know already. So I've given a couple of talks before on this game I've been working on for like a year and a half, really trying to finish it. It's called Sharkferno. It's a virtual reality game. I had the opportunity last year to meet with an engineer from Oculus who gave me some great input. He mentioned that it's really important for a game to have replay value, because I think something they really wrestle with in VR especially is that a lot of games are experiences that people will try once and then never use again. And I think he was very sensitive to that. And he was saying that, a game should have things like, a leaderboard, should be very obvious how to play it and so forth, and have things in it that would make a player come back. So I've been, for a number of months, working through a list of suggestions that he made and that other testers have made. And the last thing I wanted to do was build a leaderboard, because he said he thought that was really important. Had to figure out how to do it, but I'd really my goal is to finish this, just get Sharkferno to the point where I can submit it, accept it or not. I think I'm ready to call it as done as I'm going to get it and move on to something else. So actually, at the start of last weekend, I saw this event advertised. And to motivate myself, I made this slide and then started working on the leaderboard. So my goal was to have something by the end of the weekend. So first, it needed some kind of score. Actually, the game initially didn't even have any scoring. So I put a little bit of thought into it. I don't know if this is the best way, at least something. So yeah, the idea is that you're trying to save people from sharks. And different levels have different numbers of people, different numbers of sharks. And I thought it should be that you can gain points or lose points. So you have to start with some points. So I could change this, but this is what I have together. Your initial score is the number of people times 1,000. Person gets killed, you lose 1,000. But if you kill a shark, you gain 5,000. You also have 3 lives before the round is over. If you lose a life, you lose 5,000 points. And also, just to give it some urgency, the score just decrements by 5 every second. I thought that might cause some stress to the player, hopefully in a productive way, but to sort of motivate that you're trying to save the people. Faster is better than slower. All right, so leaderboard, that's kind of, in a way, it's different from the whole rest of the game, because this whole game is self-contained. When you talk about a leaderboard, if you can see your high score and other people's high scores, then there's something central. There's some kind of cloud service or someplace that's where all the scores are saved. I don't know if anyone else has experience with any. I looked at a couple online just through searching. There's one called GameSparks. Sounds great. It had really good documentation. It had Unity examples. I thought, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to use this one. I looked up the price. It costs $300 per month for a certain amount of usage, and then more if it's used more. I thought, I don't want to pay $300 a month for this, so I have to find something else. Then it occurred to me, Oculus must provide this. You would think, as part of Facebook, they would be pretty good at cloud stuff. And in fact, they do. They have sort of a leaderboard service for developers who are developing against their platform. I found the documentation to be surprisingly not very good. I think I've been spoiled by Unity documentation. For people here, the Unity documentation is very complete, very clear, very good. So I thought the Oculus documentation would be good also. It's actually not very good. It's like not very complete. It doesn't actually tell you exactly what the API calls are. It's sort of, they had an example, and then from the example, you have to sort of try to figure out what you want to do. And then there are some other decisions to make, like how many leaderboards. Each level in this game is really quite different. So I thought there would be one leaderboard per level. It doesn't make sense to compare scores across levels because the levels are quite different. I also, if anyone has any opinions on this, you have a choice between, do you want to always show like the top 10 scores, or do you want to show the user's score and like where it is, even if the user is like the 5,000th, maybe you want to show the user's score and just what surrounds it. I was kind of leaning towards the latter. I don't know if anyone has any ideas about that. And in any case, this little screen snippet, that's what it looks like when you go to the Oculus developer page and you have to create sort of a project of the game that you're working on. And then within it, you can actually just create leaderboards. I found working with it, some details. Of course, your application has to reach back to Oculus, sort of like the Oculus central server for this to work. That means that you have to put into the code an entitlement check, which means the user has to be authorized to use the game. In other words, if this were for sale, the user has to have paid for it to pass this check before you could do anything else. Then there's it's not a very complicated interface. There are things like write entry, get entries, the total count of entries, and yet the arguments are fairly complicated structures and not documented. I found that if you call get entries and there's nothing in the leaderboard, you get an error, which I thought was strange. And when I say the Unity API, I actually mean the Oculus API that you would call from Unity. But one thing I found very useful, I don't know if any other Unity developers have tried JetBrains Rider. I started using that recently. Really, really good editor. Using that, I figured out the APIs because actually the editor tells you what the inputs and outputs, the functions are, and so forth. So there's my last screen. So by the end of the weekend, I did have something working. I had muddled through the poor documentation. I thought was the biggest challenge. So I coded it up, tried it. I was very happy that it seemed to work. I think I have to get more people to try it, or otherwise there's only ever going to be one person in the leaderboard, which is me. The good thing is that I'll always have the high score, but it's sort of an empty leaderboard. Maybe even when it gets submitted to Oculus, it might be better if if it looks like a few other people have tested the game. So if anyone with an Oculus would like to try this out, once I finish up some details, I'd be glad to give people access. And that's it. Questions? Yes, Taro.
I'm comparing this with the iOS and the Android leaderboards, who also has their own set of leaderboards that you can bind with. When you mentioned about how there's a lot of parameters that you need to fill in for like all the functions for the Unity API, is there any way to define whether the leaderboard is global versus with your friends?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
You could limit it to your friends.
What did you decide on doing between those two?
I was thinking of global, but I think probably the best, I suppose, would be the choice. Because the leaderboard itself has all the data. So at least the way the Oculus one works, the choice is what you want to show.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you query, show me the entries, you could ask for just the user's friends or every user.
Mm-hmm. I guess the reason why I ask is because, so I think we came up with a really strange system for our mobile game. Anyways, the reason why I ask is because with mobile games, the assumption is that you're dealing with people that can reach to millions and billions because you're putting out your game for free, so on and so forth. So then it'll be incredibly intimidating to deal with a global leaderboard because you're going to be looking at scores from millions of people, and you're just going inevitably you're going to be looking at it and being like, okay, that's not going to work. I'm never going to achieve that. That stops becoming a motivator, in short. Right. Versus with local, between your friends, now your pool of people that you're dealing with is a lot smaller. And presuming you have like a lot of friends in your group, then those feel like more attainable goals. But that was the reason why we tend to kind of default to local. But I think a better choice is like checking to see how many friends you actually have from the first place, and if it's like below 5 or something, not even bother and switch to global by default.
Because there won't be anyone else on the leaderboard, most likely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. But that's a very interesting point, and I found that too. Like on mm-hmm. Beat Saber, I'll feel like, oh, I did a great job on that round, and I'm mm-hmm. 50,000th on the leaderboard.
Yeah, it's an easy way to feel like bad. I also don't like games that like grade you. Every platinum game does this, and I love platinum games, but my goodness, when it grades you, I just feel bad. It's like, can I just appreciate for how well I did and just manage to get past this level, please? That tends to be my opinion of that, but I'm one of very few people. I'm sure with more playtesting you'll learn. You'll get some different set of feedbacks, but those are my incredibly personal and not at all representative of anyone at large.
That's a good point. I can see it could actually have the reverse effect and not be very motivational.